Jews around the world are devastated at the news that's coming out of Israel. In this episode, I talk to Rabbi Asher Reznik from Israel, who's no stranger to suffering and loss. And he shares with us some of the principles that helped him navigate the illness and loss of his own daughter, and how that can help us. Welcome back. I'm Gila Ross, host of the Power Up podcast, where we share short, relatable ideas that upgrade and impact your everyday life. Today, we're very excited to have Rabbi Asher Reznik with us. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I really had almost no Jewish background, but I knew I was Jewish. But I really had no knowledge at all. And at the age of 22, there were a whole series of remarkable occurrences. I bumped into Aish Torah and Judaism. In fact, I often say the very first Orthodox Jew I ever spoke to in my entire life was Rabbi Noach Weinberg. I live in Ramat Beit Shemesh. For
those of us who are outside of Israel, the news is horrific. What's it like in Israel right now?
Well, it's hard to know. It's, we, on the one side, we feel on a personal level safe because I'm not right down there, but it's so awful, so horrific and of course everyone knows lots and lots of people that are going down there called up for fighting. So it's frightening. It's frightening. So on a personal level, we seem to be okay, but you're not that far. Israel's not such a giant place. So when any tragedy happens, it affects everybody.
I actually got to know you through your book. Tell us a little bit about your book and what it's called.
My wife and I were living in San Francisco with our two little girls. Our oldest daughter was named Rivka. Our younger one at the time was Yael. And actually, there's a pretty remarkable occurrence that happened. I was teaching classes in my house in San Francisco, and whoever wanted to come could come. So I decided to do a series called "How Does God Run the World?" And I did a two-part series called "When Bad Things Happen to Good People." The first part was called "Understanding It Intellectually." The second one was called "Dealing with It Emotionally."
Right.
It was on a Tuesday night. The Tuesday afternoon before the second class that I was supposed to give of dealing with it emotionally, that's when we got the news our daughter was diagnosed with leukemia.
Wow.
So it was a remarkable hashgacha. The occurrence was so striking, and I've thought about it a lot over the years. And one of the most important messages I got from that is that it's something that I should be trying to teach people about, to try to understand. No one ever wants to be an expert in difficulties.
No.
But when you're thrust into that situation, then you have to decide what to do. So I'm a teacher, so I ended up teaching a lot over the years. And from the time that she was 2 years old till she passed away was many years, and then she's passed away over 20 years. So really from that very first day that she first was diagnosed till now, it's been over 30 years. So I've been dealing with these issues for that long. And what I was doing for many years was I would research some topic and I would teach it in my community on the yahrzeit, the anniversary of her passing. And then I decided to make a website a number of years ago called jewishclarity.com. And I posted these different collections of classical sources. And then after many years, I decided I'll make a book out of it. So this book is really a collection of all the talks I gave on my daughter's yahrzeit over the years. In fact, each chapter is exactly the order of the years. So a person who looks at the titles will see the progression that I went through in grappling with different issues over the years.
Wow. So, I mean, obviously the title is pretty intriguing.
Right.
And knowing your story is also intriguing. Pain is reality, suffering is a choice.
Right.
Is
correct.
That title? Right. So as a father, tell us what that means.
So I can tell you where the title comes from. There's a verse in the Torah that's really the source for that idea. It's a verse in Dvarim, chapter 8, verse 5. It says, you should know with your heart that just like a parent gives Yisurim, challenges and difficulties, to his child, God your Lord gives you Yisurim, challenges and difficulties. So the message, by the Torah comparing God to a parent, the message is that, of course, sometimes a parent needs to do things for a child that are painful and difficult for the child, but it's always for the benefit of the child and always from the love of the parents. The Torah is telling us that's exactly how we're supposed to view what happens from Hashem. It's from God's love and for our benefit.
Right.
Now, I would say the most important word in my title is the word choice.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So, and I think that's actually very relevant to the horrific situation we're in right now. Now, people oftentimes think the most important question to ask when you're hit by a crisis or a challenge or a tragedy of some sort, the most important question to ask is why? Why did it happen? Why did God do that? And that's not an unimportant question. But there's another very important question, which is, how do I deal with it?
Right.
How do I respond to it? So it may be that we'll think about the whole situation that happened in Israel, or it's happening in Israel right now, and we may not understand from a divine perspective why this happened, why all these people, why that person was saved and that person was killed and that person was taken hostage. We may never understand that, but we have to know how to deal with it. So it's important to realize that dealing with it is a basic element of life, even if you don't have a theological answer to the why.
So it's like almost two different questions, right? It's
That's correct. I think that's a very practical way of dealing with it. Don't only focus on the why, but focus on how do you deal with it.
Right. So can you tell us a little bit about, I mean, whether it's your journey through your daughter's illness and passing, of how you came to answer that question of how do you deal with it?
Yes. Yeah. So I'm very fortunate because Rabbi Weinberg was my Rosh Yeshiva, and he taught us so many important principles. And those principles are the ones that really got me through the whole situation and helped me to deal with it in relatively speaking, I think a healthy manner. So one thing he used to tell us is a creation of something from nothing is inherently a creation of something for nothing. Meaning to say, our existence, our life is a pure gift. We didn't deserve it. We didn't earn it. Before anyone existed, of course they didn't deserve to exist because they didn't exist.
Right.
So therefore, what do you say about an entity that gives you the most valuable thing you have, which is life, as an undeserved gift? That's an expression of love. So that was a basic thing. And Rabbi Weinberg used to always talk about that. He used to always say, you appreciate how much Hashem loves you. And he lived that. And he got us to appreciate that and to live that as well. I don't know how I would have dealt with the situation had I not had such a remarkable role model and a remarkable teacher to teach me these basic principles.
You had those principles before, you're saying, or right. And that kind of helped you.
Helped me a lot.
Because sometimes that's part of the big challenge is that, you know, a person who's going through suffering, was going through a difficult time, it's struggle with how do I match those two up? You know, you're telling me that God loves me, and on the other hand, I don't feel like that. Right. So how would you respond to that? Yeah.
So it's interesting. The a basic principle in Judaism was what's called sameach bechalko, be happy with your portion.
Right.
I often ask people the question, do you need to believe in God to do that, to be sameach bechalko, to be happy with your portion? And I think the answer is no. I don't think you need to be religious for that. The way I like to put it is, everyone has a partially filled glass. We can all choose to focus on the part that's full, the part that's empty. If I focus on the part that's full, I feel good. If I focus on the part that's empty, I feel bad. So why wouldn't you focus on what you have rather than what you don't have? We all have something. We all have a lot of positive in our life. I mean, the fact that we're alive. I remember years ago when I was living in New York, I heard a remarkable story on the radio. There was a woman in Canada at that time. This is about 30 years ago. A woman in Canada who was a quadriplegic, couldn't move any of her four limbs, and she was petitioning the Canadian government to be allowed to kill herself, or to be killed rather, because she couldn't even do it. And there was a woman in America who was also a quadriplegic, and she was trying to arrange a flight to fly to Canada to meet with the woman and try to talk her out of her lawsuit. So I was so struck by this. Here there's two people that, relatively speaking, is a relatively similar situation. One wants nothing more than to kill herself. The other one wants nothing more than to show someone the value of life. There's a choice involved, and choice is so important. We live in a society that tells us you're a victim, you're not able to make choices yourself, especially when it comes to emotions. You're not able to make choices. That's so disempowering. Judaism is very empowering. You can make choices. You can make choices emotionally in so many ways. And that's really a big part of the book, is to emphasize whatever the situation is, you can make choices. And the fact is, there's a big world out there. If you don't believe in a world to come, I think it changes the whole situation. I actually think that everyone really believes in a world to come, but that's a bit more controversial. I oftentimes tell people, rather than try and prove there's a God, let me prove to you that you believe in God. And I think the same is true with the world to come. I can't prove to someone there's a world to come, but I might be able to show you that you believe in a world to come. That's different. That's a different topic maybe, but I believe that everyone really believes that. So when you see that, and it's interesting, the Mishnah tells us that this world, talks about this world, the world to come, in Pirkei Avot. So it tells us that this world is a passageway to the world to come, and one moment in this world of accomplishment is worth all of the world to come, and one moment of satisfaction in the world to come is worth all of this world. So I often ask people, so based on the Mishnah, what's better, this world or the world to come? The answer, of course, is it depends. If you're talking about accomplishment, this world's better. If you're talking about satisfaction of what you accomplished, the world to come is better. I can tell you one thing, having gone through this situation, and it was certainly as a parent, to lose a child is something that you never get past. It's I think I mentioned in the book that it's like an amputation.
Right.
Even if you lose a limb, God forbid, you can still have a good quality of life, but you never forget that you're missing a limb. So I enjoy life. My wife and I enjoy life. That doesn't mean that we don't think about our daughter all the time. I can tell you in a very literal way, there hasn't been a single day in the over 20 years since my daughter passed away, I haven't thought about her multiple times. And I don't think that's something special with me. I think that's a normal situation. A bereaved parent is always feeling the loss of their child. That's a normal situation. I don't think I'm usual in that regard. But I can tell you one thing: the world to come is much, much more real to me than it ever would have been otherwise. I think my daughter all the time. I'm doing mitzvahs for her and learning for her all the time. The world to come is very tangible and very real. I have a chapter in my book about the world to come because I think it's such a basic principle that every Jew has to be aware of and understand.
Firstly is that, things come from a love of God.
Right.
You were saying that was a big thing that kind of helped you. And the second principle I think you were speaking about was that it's a choice. We even when life is hard and difficult and challenging, we as people still have choices, right? And we can still choose what to do. And also it's about the world to come, how that changes our perspective on everything. So whether it's these three principles or different principles, and what would you say to those, nowadays going through what's going on in Israel, whether we're in Israel, we're outside of Israel, every Jew, I think, is connected to what's going on and it's affecting all of us. what would you want listeners to hear, to take from
One of the most powerful sources that I quote a number of times in the book is Viktor Frankl in his classical work, Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah.
So I say to myself, if this person could tell me there are choices even in Auschwitz to see the situation and see meaning in your challenges, if that's true in Auschwitz, that's true in any situation. So that's one thing. Anyone can do that. Now, it's interesting, the principle of nechama, consolation, the primary meaning of that is a change in perspective. Rashi tells us in the very first place, we just actually had it. We'll have this Shabbos in Parshas Bereishis, the end of Parshas Bereishis. Hashem says, I regret having made man. The word nechama means a change in perspective. And we can all do that. We can all choose to focus on the negative or focus in a positive way on the situation. Now, of course, we're all going through a very horrific time right now, and I don't want to minimize that. And you don't tell someone when they're going through the actual trauma about trying to change perspective. So in a way, it's almost a bit premature to talk about these ideas. But once the person's past the trauma, if thank God we will get past the trauma at some point soon, then you can focus on that and realize there's choices to make. We all have blessings in our life. We all have much in our life to appreciate. And the world to come is a very real place. And as a Jewish people, we have to realize how special it is to be Jewish. I'll tell you a remarkable story. This is not in the book, but it's a remarkable story. There was a student in the yeshiva whose father was a Holocaust survivor. And his father came to visit his son. He came to visit the yeshiva and was standing outside the base medrash, outside the yeshiva, and screaming against God. And everyone doesn't know what do we do. What are you going to tell this person? He starts screaming, my parents are so religious, and look what happened to them. And he's just screaming against God. And it was so helpless. What he was supposed to do? So one student went outside and said to him, I want to ask you a question. If you had to go back there right now, would you rather go back there as a prisoner, as you were, or as one of the guards? He stopped. He stopped in his track. He says, in a second, I'd go back as a prisoner. I would never want to be one of the guards. And that was a turning point for him, because he realized as much as he went through these horrific things as a prisoner, at least his morality was intact. At least his humanity was intact. Means he was able to see a positive in his horrific situation. And I would say the same thing. I mean, I don't recommend seeing all the gory videos that are being sent around. But you look at a little bit and you realize, my goodness, we as a Jewish people, thank God we have our morality, we have our positive behavior, and we see the barbarians that are around us. And thank God I'm not like that. It's horrific that what's going on, but we as a Jewish people brought morality to the world, and we to a great degree teach morality to the world, and that's something which is very positive. It's one of the paradoxes with anti-Semitism is that it shows us the special quality of the Jewish people. I have an article on my website. It's not in the book, but in my website about anti-Semitism, the Jewish perspective on anti-Semitism, and it's all about our values. The anti-Semites are trying to destroy our moral values. So as horrible as that is, we have something to be proud of. We have something to realize that we have something very special that we have as Jews.
Right. So even the fact that the anti-Semites shows us that what we have to be proud of. That's beautiful.
Yeah. I'll tell you another thing. This is in the book. But and also a little bit related, even because this also then happened in Gaza. In May of 2004, there was a social worker named Tali Hatuel who lived in the Gaza Strip. This was before they pulled out. And she was gunned down on the highway by terrorists, along with her four daughters. When their husband and father was asked if he hated God for what had happened, he replied, but I'm only able to cope because of God. He said, rather than focus on the horror of how my family was taken from me, I'm focusing instead on the 12 beautiful years God gave me with my beloved wife and daughters. I just have to believe God has a plan why that time was cut short. Later on, at a later date, when he announced he's getting remarried, he said, my sight is set on the future. I'm building again on a home that still is. My wife and daughters will never be erased. They'll always be a part of me, a part of my life. The new home I will establish will not replace the home that was destroyed. Rather, our home will be an additional floor upon that home's foundations. He continued, after the tragedy, I realized I had two choices, to fall and be destroyed or to continue to live. I am choosing life.
Wow.
That's such a powerful statement.
Yes.
And I'll read you one more thing. This is also my chapter on Nechama. It was a man, Alan Bodner, who was I think at the first yahrzeit for his wife. He said, Nechama does not mean to forget and move on. It does not even mean we stop grieving. Nechama means to reconsider what was originally thought, to reevaluate the situation. 1 year ago at the funeral, we thought we could not go on without Jill. Now we learn we must. In my hesped, I said, my tomorrow has been canceled. Over the past year, I've learned I was wrong. Tomorrow has not been canceled, not for me, not for my family, and not even for Jill.
Wow.
So, and the Maharal says Nechama is the ability to hope for the future. And another commentary says it's the refusal to give up. Even when you feel so much despair, you can't go on living. So look, the Jewish people have gone through a lot. They've gone through a lot in our history. And this is a horrible situation. I think I just heard someone say it's the worst tragedy that happened to the Jewish people since the Holocaust. That could be. But the Jewish people are strong. We believe in our values and our strength, and we'll go forward. We'll be victorious in the end.
Right.
So I would say, listen, my message is it's a choice. Everything's a choice. Emotions are a choice. Dealing with life is a choice. Be willing to accept Nechama and consolation from Hashem is a choice. And don't buy this crazy notion that you're a helpless victim. You have no ability to make any choices. We can make choices. Judaism is the most basic principle in all of Judaism is making choices.
Right. Thank you. We have moral choices, right, as well, about how we respond, and we can be proud of the moral choices that we're not like the people. So, right. Thank you. People who want to get your book, where can they get hold of it?
Of course, any Jewish bookstore should hopefully have it. But in addition, if you want, you can get it right from my website. My website's called jewishclarity.com.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rabbi Reznik. Thank you.
Okay, we should have positive news.
Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to hear what you thought. You can get in touch with me, gilaross@gmail.com. And if you like this, you'll love my new book, Living Beautifully, which can be found on Amazon.com or directly through me. And please take a moment to rate, review, subscribe, and share the podcast. Thank you and have a good day.